Hello everyone and welcome to today's session, and today we'll be discussing the theory related to the chapter Organism and Population. This is the part 1 of the lecture, and in today's session we'll be discussing NCERT section 11.1. This is the disclaimer. So what are the objectives of today's session? So today we will understand the hierarchical level of biological organization, starting from macromolecules to biomes. And we will give a special emphasis on populations as a crucial ecological level. Okay. Then we will differentiate between how type and why type scientific questions. Okay. So there are two questions that you should ask whenever you see a thing, whenever you see any object. There should be two questions that should come into your mind. First is how type and second is why type. So we'll discuss about this. We'll also recognize their distinct role in understanding biological mechanism and evolutionary purposes. Next, we will explain and we will understand key population attributes. Means what are the features of the population. Okay. Within this, we'll talk about the birth rate, death rate, sex ratio, age distribution, and various methods of measuring the population size or population density. Okay, then we will apply the population density equation to understand how natality, mortality, immigration, and emigration affect population growth over time. Okay, so in today's session, first I will give you a brief introduction of this chapter, Organism and Population. Then we will talk about the topic population, which is NCERT section 11.1. Then we will summarize this entire session. We'll discuss some NCERT based questions. We'll also discuss some keynotes that will help you memorize these topics, and in the end there will be some interesting questions that will enhance your critical thinking ability. So these questions challenge you to think critically about how populations interact with their environment. So let's begin with today's session. Let's first talk about the levels of the biological organization. So this is crucial for understanding how life is structured, from the smallest components to the largest system. Okay, let's first start with the macromolecules, which are the building blocks of life, such as proteins and nucleic acid. Okay, next level is cells. Okay, so cells, as we know, they are the basic unit of life. They are the structural and functional unit of the life. All the organisms, they are made up of these cells, and the cells, they are performing all the functions. That's why we are saying that cells are the structural and functional unit of the life. Okay, you can think of them as tiny factories where all the essential processes of the life are occurring. Now let's move on to the next level, which is tissues. So basically tissues are group of similar cells which are working together to perform a specific function. For example, muscle tissues, they help in movement, while nervous tissue, they are involved in transmitting the signals. Okay, following tissue, we have organs. So organs are structures made up of different type of tissues that work together to perform complex functions. For instance, heart is an organ that pumps blood throughout the body. Next level is the individual organism. Okay, now an organism is a single, it is complete living entity that can carry out all the basic life processes like respiration, digestion, and excretion. Okay, clear? So this individual organism can include single bacterium as well as entire human being. Now, next level is populations. Population consists of individuals of the same species, okay, living in a particular area. For example, all the deer in a forest form a population. Next level is communities. So communities, okay, or a community is made up of all the different population that live and interact in a particular area. So this can include plants, animals, and microorganisms. Okay, so you can see there are different populations which belong to different species. Clear? All of these populations, they form a community. Within this community, uh, plants are present, animals are there, as well as microorganisms. Next, we have ecosystem. So an ecosystem includes all the living organisms in a community along with the non-living components of the environment. What are the non-living components? Such as air, water, and minerals. So basically these are abiotic components. So ecosystem consists of biotic components, which are living organism, and abiotic components as well. Okay. So ecosystem can be as small as pond or as large as a forest. Finally, we reach to biome. So basically biomes are large regions characterized by specific climate conditions and particular type of plants and animals. Okay, examples include desert, forest, and grasslands. Clear? So biomes, what is the definition of biomes? They are basically very large regions which have their own climatic conditions and particular type of plants and the animals. Okay, so here in this image you can see level of organization. So they have shown from the individual level, individual, then population, community, ecosystem. Okay, clear? And then you have biome and then biosphere. Then biosphere means the all the ecosystem present on the earth. This is known as the biosphere. Okay, now what are the question to address? Okay, so now we'll be addressing some key questions that help us understand the mechanism and significance behind the biological processes. Okay, first are the how type questions. So these questions are crucial because they help us uncover the mechanism behind the biological processes. For example, understanding how a bird sings involves looking at the physical aspect of the process. How type question basically involved seeking the mechanism behind the process. Okay, this means we are interested in the step-by-step operations that lead to a particular outcome. It's like asking how a machine works. Okay, example of a how type question is how does the bird sing? So this question prompts us to explore the physical mechanism involved, such as birds' vocal cords and the airflow. Now, the answer to how type questions involve physical mechanisms. So this means we are looking at the tangible operational aspects that make the process happen. Clear? Now, next are the why type questions. So these questions are equally important because they help us understand the significance and purpose behind the biological processes. Okay. Now, when we ask why type questions, we are seeking the significance of the process. So this involves looking at the reasons and purposes behind why something happens in nature. Okay. An example of why type question is why does the bird sing? So this question encourages us to explore the purpose or function of the bird singing. Why is bird singing? Okay, so bird might be singing to attract the mates or marking a territory. Now the answer to why type questions involve purpose and the function. So now here we are looking at the evolutionary or adaptive reasons behind this process. Okay, now what are the example of these scientific questions? Okay, first are why are night blooming flowers white? So again, they can be how type questions and why type questions. Clear? So why do you think these flowers are often white? This is a great example of how organisms adapt to their surroundings. So night blooming flowers are typically white. So these adaptations help them stand out in low light conditions. making them more visible to nocturnal pollinators like moths and bats. So this is a very clever strategy to ensure pollination even at night. So without pollination, there can be no seed set and fruit set. Next question is, how does bee locate nectar? So this question highlights the intricate relationship between bees and the plants they pollinate. Now bees have an incredible ability to find nectar. They use their keen sense of smell and vision to recognize flower colors and patterns. Additionally, bees can detect ultraviolet patterns on flowers, which are invisible to humans. So, this multisensory approach ensures they effectively gather nectar, benefiting both the bees and the plants. Okay, next is, why does cactus have thorns? So, this is a great example of how organisms adapt to their surrounding again. So cacti, they have thorns, they have or they have spines, primarily for protection and water conservation. So these spines deter the animals from eating the cactus and help reduce water loss by minimizing the, you can say, loss of water from the cactus surface, because leaves are reduced into spines. Okay, so this adaptation is crucial for survival in the arid environment, in the xerophytic environment. Next, how does chick recognize mother? This is another question. Clear? So, chick recognizes their mother primarily through visual imprinting during the first few hours after hatching, along with the vocal and the behavioral cues. Clear? So, again, all of these questions, whenever you think about this question, you should ask how type questions and why type questions. Okay. Now, let's talk about ecology focus studies interactions between them. Okay, so ecology is all about studying how living organisms interact with each other and with their surroundings. Clear? So ecology includes two components, biotic and abiotic components. Clear? So there is interaction among the organisms in an ecosystem, and there is interaction of the organism with the abiotic environment. Abiotic environment means non-living factors such as sunlight, water, and temperature. Clear? Now, let's talk about four main ecological levels. Okay, we'll talk about these. First is organism. Okay, we talked about all the ecological level in the beginning, but here we are focusing on four main ecological level. First of them is organism. Okay, so organism is any individual living. It is any individual living thing, like a single plant, single animal, or a microbe. Now, each organism plays a specific role in its ecosystem, contributing to the overall balance. The next level is population, as we have discussed. The population consists of all the individuals of a particular species living in a specific area. For example, a herd of elephants in a savanna represents a population. And population is important for understanding species dynamics and conservation efforts as well. Moving on to communities, which are a group of different populations living together in a particular area. For example, a forest community might include trees, birds, insects, and mammals, which are all interacting in complex ways. So, communities, they show us the diversity of life and how species coexist. And finally, we have biomes, which are large areas characterized by specific climate conditions and type of vegetations, okay, or type of animals. Examples include desert, forest, and grasslands. Okay, now let's talk about some of the features of the population, characteristic features of the population. Okay, the first one is rarely found as isolated individuals. So population consists of group of individuals. Okay, means that most of the species prefer to live in groups rather than living alone. Okay, so the species, they live in groups in defined geographical areas. Okay, this means that populations are often confined to specific habitats where they can find the resources they need to survive. For example, penguins are typically found in cold Antarctic regions. Okay, now let's consider how these groups share or compete for these similar resources. Now, within a population, individual may need to compete for food, water, or space. Now, this competition can influence the population size and structure. Now, another important attribute is that members of a population can potentially interbreed. This means they can reproduce with each other, ensuring the continuation of their species. For instance, all the lions in the savannah can potentially mate with each other. Now, together, these characteristics constitute that we call a population. So, these are the characteristics of a population. So, basically, a population is essentially a group of individuals of the same species living in a particular area, interacting with each other and their environment, and they can potentially interbreed with each other as well. It is also important to know that groups reproducing asexually are also considered population. Okay? Even though they don't interbreed in the traditional sense, they still form a cohesive group that shares resources and space. For example, bacteria in a petri dish is also called a population. Okay, what are the examples of population? Like cormorants in the wetland? Okay, so cormorants, basically these are the birds that often gather in large numbers. Then rats in the abandoned dwelling. Next one is teak wood trees in the forest. So these trees form a population within their natural habitat. And bacteria in the culture plate. So culture plate, basically this is a controlled environment where bacteria can grow and multiply, forming a population. Similarly, lotus plant in a pond represents a population in an aquatic environment. Now let's talk about some of the characteristic of population and characteristic of individual. Okay, what is the difference between population attributes and individual attributes? Let's talk about this. Okay, first is the birth and the death rates. So these rates help us to understand how population grow or decline over time. Now individuals have birth and death. If we talk about individuals, they have birth or death. Okay, but if we talk about population, they have birth rate and death rate. Okay, birth and death rate, they are expressed as per capita changes, meaning they are calculated per individual in the population. Okay, now rates are expressed as per capita changes. So for example, okay, example of lotus plant. Okay, we are taking example of a lotus plant. Let's calculate the birth rate. The birth rate is equal to new birth, okay, divided by the initial population. So if the new lotus plant added is 8 and the initial population was 20, the birth rate will be 0.4 offerings per lotus per year. Now let's calculate the death rate. We are taking example of fruit flies. Okay, so the formula for death rate will be, okay, new deaths divided by the initial population. Okay, means suppose the fruit fly that died were 4, initial population was 40, so answer will be 0.4 individuals per fruit fly per week. This is the death rate. Okay, so death rate is basically the number of deaths divided by the initial population. Okay, birth rate is new birth, number of individuals added divided by the initial population. Okay, let's talk about sex ratio in the population. Okay, so this is a fundamental characteristic that help us understand the composition of a population. Okay, so individual can be either male or female. Now population has a sex ratio. For example, 60% are female and 40% are male. So this ratio can influence various factors including reproduction rate and social dynamics within the population as well. Now let's talk about the age distribution. Okay, so age distribution can tell us a lot about the growth potential and stability of a population. So a certain population comprises individual of different ages. Okay, so there are different age groups. Okay, like 10 to you can say 0 to 10, 10 to 20, likewise. Okay, now this diversity in age is important because it affects the population's ability to grow and adapt. Younger individuals may represent potential for growth, while older individuals might indicate stability or decline. Now, an age pyramid is a useful tool that shows the distribution of age groups within the population. Okay, now by looking at the shape of the pyramid, we can infer whether a population is growing, stable, or declining. Okay, for human, you can say in a population, you can see the age distribution of male and the female. Here, if you look at the human population, you can see the age distribution of male and the female. Now, let's talk about the pyramid shapes. Okay, types of pyramid. These pyramid indicate the population status. First is the growing population, second is the staying population, stable population, third is the declining population. In this image, you can see these are the age pyramids. The first one is expanding population or growing population. Here you can see it has a wide base with each younger age group larger than the one above, creating a triangular pyramid shape. Okay, so you can see here in the growing population and expanding population, the number of individuals are more in pre-reproductive phase. So if the number of individuals are more in pre-reproductive phase, then they will enter into reproductive phase. So they will reproduce more, they will produce more offerings. Okay, so the population will expand. And here in expanding population, less number of individuals are in post-reproductive phase, means their reproductive phase has ended. In stable population, you can see what is happening here. You get nearly vertical sides with similar sized age group until older age, creating a more rectangular shape. So in stable population, pre-reproductive and reproductive phases, they are equal. And post-reproductive phase, you can see it is smaller. Okay, so number of people dying and number of people adding into the population are equal. Then in declining population, you can see you have a narrow base with larger older population than the younger ones, creating a inverted pyramid or urn shape. So in declining population, you can see the individuals in the pre-reproductive phase, they are less, they are smaller than the reproductive and the post-reproductive phases. So that's why it is declining, because less number of individuals are in pre-reproductive phase. Okay, more number of individuals are in post-reproductive phase. Okay, that's why it has a narrow base, means less number of individual in the pre-reproductive phase. Okay, so here in declining population, you have a narrow base. This means that the individuals in the pre-reproductive phase are less as compared to reproductive and post-reproductive phase. Okay, now let's talk about population size or population density. So basically this indicates the habitat status. Okay, so a healthy habitat might support a large population, while a declining population could signal environmental issues. Okay, now you can see the population size can vary, ranging from fewer than 10 individuals to millions. So this variation depends on the species and the environment. For example, a small island might support a limited number of species, while a vast forest could support millions. How can you calculate the population size or density? So you can calculate in several ways. First one is total numbers give you a straightforward count, while percentage cover shows how much area a population occupies. Then biomass measures the total mass of the organism, and then you have relative density. This compares the population to other population in the area. Now, what are the indirect methods to estimate population? So for example, first one, the number of fish caught per trap can indicate fish density. Similarly, tiger population might be estimated through pug marks, and fecal pellets can provide clues about animal presence and the numbers. Here you can see this is the tiger counting methods. Okay, so tiger census can be done through pug marks as well. Okay, let's talk about the population size and density. Population size significance. So this we have discussed. This indicates the habitat status. It is used to evaluate ecological processes. Okay, so population size is also used to evaluate ecological processes. This means scientists can study how populations grow or they shrink or they remain stable over time. Okay, clear? So this help assess competition, predation impact and pesticides effect. Clear? For example, if a predator's population increases, it might lead to a decrease in its prey population. What can be the range of population size? So it can be as low as less than 10, for example, Siberian cranes at Bharatpur, or it can go to millions, for example, Chlamydomonas in a pond. This is clear? Okay. How can you calculate population density? So let's talk about population density measurement. So it is not always measured in numbers. Okay, this is important because sometimes the sheer number of organism does not give you the full picture. For example, the impact of a single large predator might be more significant than a large number of smaller prey. Okay, generally the total number of individuals is the most straightforward way to measure population density. So this method is often used because it's simple and provide a clear snapshot of the population size at a given time. Now, there are alternative methods to measure the population size as well. Okay, so alternative measurements needed in specific cases. Okay, so in some cases, alternative measurements are required to measure the population density. Clear? Now, what are the limitations of the numerical measurement? Okay, so in some cases, simply counting individuals can be meaningless. For example, if the organisms are spread over a vast area, the density might be low even if the total number is high. Okay, it is also important to note that determining population density can be difficult in certain situations. For example, in dense forest or underwater environment, counting each individual accurately can be challenging. Okay, for example, banyan tree versus carrot grass comparison. So one banyan versus 200 carrot grass. Okay, so you might have one banyan tree and 200 carrot grass, but the ecological impact of banyan tree could be far greater than 200 carrot grass. Okay, clear? That's why numerical measurements can not be done all the time. Clear? Okay, now let's explore the concept of population growth in biology. Okay, this is the again very crucial topic because understanding how population change over time help us predict ecological dynamics and manage the natural resources as well. Okay, first one is food availability. Okay, the first factor affecting population size is food availability. So just like human organisms need food to survive and to reproduce. When food is plentiful, population can grow rapidly. However, when food is scarce, population growth can slow down or even decline. Okay, next one is predation pressure. Okay, so predators, they can also, you can say, control the size of the prey. Okay, if more number of predators are present in a population or in an ecosystem, then obviously the prey population size will be less. Okay, so next one is predation pressure. Then adverse environment. So another important factor is adverse environment. Extreme weather conditions such as drought or floods can drastically affect the population size by reducing resources or directly harming the organism. Okay, now let's talk about population density changes and how they help understand if species is flourishing. Okay, so if there is a change in population density, then we can say either the population is flourishing or it is declining. Clear? Flourishing means more number of individuals are being added. Declining means individuals are dying. Okay, so this might indicate an environmental stress or resource scarcity. That's why the population is declining. Number of individuals are decreasing. Okay, so understanding this trend is vital for conservation effects and ensuring the long-term survival of the species. Okay, now four basic processes that affect population density are, okay, first of all, let's talk about two processes that increase the density. First one is natality, okay, which refers to the number of births added to the initial population density. Okay, it is like adding new members to a community. Okay, then you have immigration. Okay, so this also increases the population density. So immigration means when individuals enter a habitat from elsewhere. Clear? So number of individuals entering into a habitat from elsewhere. So this will also increase the population density. Now let's talk about two processes that decrease the density. First one is mortality. What do you mean by mortality? Mortality is the number of deaths in a population. Okay, this is a natural process that reduces the number of individuals in a population over time. Second one is the immigration. Okay, so this means when the individuals leave a particular habitat. So this will decrease the population density. In this image, you can see it is showing you factors affecting the population density. So you can see a positive sign is given to these factors, immigration and natality, because they are increasing the population density, and negative sign is assigned to mortality and immigration because they are decreasing the population density. And N here represents in the center, N is the population density. Let's talk about the population density equation. Okay, so you should remember this equation. Nt plus 1 is equal to Nt plus B plus I minus D plus E. Okay, where Nt plus 1 is a population density at time t plus 1, Nt is a population density at time t. Okay, then B is the births, I is the immigration, D is the death, and E is the immigration. Okay, clear? So you can see this Nt is the current population density, and then Nt plus 1 is the population density at time t plus 1. Now population density will increase when a sum of B and I, means birth and immigration, is greater than the sum of D and E, means death and the immigration. So under normal conditions, birth and deaths are most important factors you can see, not immigration and immigration, but birth and death, they're the most important factors. Immigration and immigration matter in special cases like new habitat colonization. Okay, so what does this mean? This means that under normal condition, birth and deaths are the most significant factors affecting population density. However, immigration and immigration become crucial in special situations, such as when a species colonizes a new habitat. Okay, in this case, immigration and immigration can cause change in the population density. Okay, let's summarize this entire lecture. Okay, first of all, we talked about the biological organization. So there are different level of the organizations. Okay, we focused on four main levels: organism, population, communities, and biomass. Now, population, they are the group of same species living in a specific area, sharing resources, and potentially the interbreeding. The key characteristic of population include birth rate, death rate, sex ratio, and age distribution. Okay. We also talk about the population size or population density. This can be measured through various methods such as total numbers, percentage cover, or biomass, and can be estimated directly or indirectly depending on the species and the situations. Okay. Then the population growth is determined by four basic processes: natality and immigration, which increase the population density, and mortality and immigration, which decrease the population density. And this population density can be expressed by the equation nt plus 1 is equal to nt plus b plus I minus a sum of d plus e. Now let's discuss some NCERT based questions. The first question is, which of the following is not a valid way to measure the population density in ecological studies? Okay, so options are total number, option number B is percentage cover, C is individual age, and option number D is biomass. What is the correct answer? So let's have a look at the answer. See, option number C, individual age is the correct answer. So, individual age is a characteristic of single organism, not a measure of population density. Clear? The population density can be measured through, first is total numbers, which is a direct count. It is a straightforward method and give a clear picture of the population size, especially in smaller or more accessible areas. Next is percentage cover for plants. Okay, this is primarily used for plants. So this measure measures the area covered by a species within a given plot. Next one is biomass, which refers to the total mass of the population. So this measure is particularly useful for understanding the energy flow and productivity within an ecosystem. Now, age distribution. Okay, describe the relative proportion of different age groups in a population, and is a population attribute, not a measure of density. That's why here the answer will be individual age. This is not a valid way to measure the population density. Clear? The next one, a researcher studying a bird population notes that there are more young individuals than the old one, with a broad base tapering towards the top in the age pyramid. The population is likely stable, declining, growing, or extinct. What is the correct answer? Option number C, it is growing, it is expanding. So let's have a look at the answer. Okay, so age pyramid show the distribution of different age groups in a population. A broader base indicates more young individuals. Clear? Young individuals means they can reproduce. They can produce more number of offerings. Okay, so in expanding population, the more number of individuals are there in pre-reproductive phase. Clear? So the base is broad and it is tapering at, as you move upwards, because there are less number of individuals in the post-reproductive phase. So tapering top indicates fewer older individuals. Okay, these older individuals, they can't reproduce. They represent individuals in post-reproductive phase. Now, this triangular shape with broad base is characteristic of the growing population, and the structure suggests high birth rates, because more number of individuals in pre-reproductive and reproductive phase means they will produce more number of offerings. Clear? So this will indicate high birth rates and good survival of the young individuals. In contrast, stable population would show a more rectangular shape, while declining population would show a narrow base. So declining population will show a urn-shaped age pyramid. Now let's discuss some keynote. So population studies focuses on groups of same species in defined areas characterized by birth rate, birth and death rate, sex ratio, and age distribution. These are the basically characteristic of a population. And these are crucial for understanding species survival and ecological dynamics. Okay, we also talked about this equation. Okay, so this equation shows how birth and death as well as immigration and immigration affect the population size over time. Okay. Now, population density, as we have seen, can be measured through direct counts, okay, by percentage cover or by biomass, or through indirect methods like track counts, okay, like pug marks in case of tiger. Now, direct methods suit different species and situations. Age pyramid, they reveal population status, whether the population is growing, it is stable, or it is declining. Okay, it is important for assessing population health and predicting the future trends. Now, there are some interesting questions for you. First question is, a population of rabbits in a forest has 100 individuals with 65 females and 35 males. So, they are talking about the sex ratio. Over 1 year, there were 120 births and 30 deaths, while 10 rabbits immigrated and 15 emigrated from the area. Using the population density equation, you have to calculate the final population size and explain how the sex ratio might influence future population growth. The next question, you have to compare and contrast how type and Y type question using examples of white night blooming flowers. Okay, how does you frame both type of questions about this phenomena, and what kind of answer would you expect for it? So you have to analyze these questions. Okay, you have to critically analyze them. Okay, so this will uh, show how much have you understood this topic. Okay, so with this we have discussed the theory. Now let's discuss DPP related to these topics. So let's begin with the first question. The first question is, the population has more young individuals compared to the older individuals. What would be the status of the population after some years? What are the options? It will decline, it will stabilize, it will increase. And option number D, it will first decline and then stabilize. What is the correct answer? Okay, here the correct answer will be option number C. It will increase because more number of individuals, they are young as compared to the older individuals. So these young individuals, okay, they have the capability to reproduce. They will enter in the reproductive stage. They will reproduce. They will produce more number of offerings, and the population will increase. Okay, so here the number of birth or birth rate will be more. Next one, the main cause of population explosion in the world is option number one, excellent job facilities. Option number B, increase in agriculture production. Option number C, excellent healthcare. Option number D is fewer battles and wars. What is the correct answer? Okay, here option number C is the correct answer. Okay, now the healthcare facilities are better, infrastructure is better. Okay, all the medicines are available. You have medical professionals that are employed. Clear? So this has led to decrease in the number of deaths, and the population has increased. Next one, in a population of an area, natality was equal to mortality for a given time period. However, the population density of a population increased. Which of the following may be the reason for the increase? So options, the number of immigrants is equal to number of immigrants. Option number B, number of immigrants is more than number of immigrants. Option number C, number of immigrants is less than number of immigrants. And option number D, cannot be predicted. What is the correct answer? The option number B is the correct answer here. As the population size is increasing, so number of immigrants should be more as compared to number of immigrants. Means more number of individuals are entering a particular habitat from elsewhere. Okay, that's why the population density is increasing. Next one, density of a population increases when immigration increases, immigration decreases, mortality increases, and natality increases. What is the correct answer? Okay, option number D is the correct answer here. Natality increases means the birth increases, number of birth increases, then only the population will increase. If mortality increases, obviously the population density will decrease because more number of people are dying. Immigration decreases, okay, then also the population density will not increase. Emigration increases, then the population density will decrease. So correct answer will be natality increases. Next one, you have to select the correct options from the given figure. Okay, this is the figure based question. You have these four options. Okay, you have to label this 1, 2, 3, and 4. Clear? And remember the direction also where the arrows are have been placed. So what will be the correct answer here? Okay, the correct answer here will be option number D. N is the population density. The first one is the immigration. You can see the people are leaving a particular habitat. And then third is the immigration. People are entering into the population. Okay, more number of individuals are entering in a particular habitat. Okay, so with this we have discussed the DPP also. So all our answers are correct. Clear? So with this we end this session. I hope this session was quite knowledgeable for you. We'll meet you in the next session. Thank you very much for listening.